to share our knowledge about our mental well-being and the spiritual well-being. So without further ado, we can start our session today. So before that, there are two requests I would like to make. So when we start the program, I would like to request all of you to switch on your cameras as a mark of respect to our resource person. And also, the program agenda will be like, we will have the main talk. The thera will be doing the main talk for 1 hour, that is from 7 to 8. And after that, if you have any questions, you can put them on the chat. So no need to wait till the last moment. If you have any questions, please use the chat, put your questions, and we will be taking them from 8 onwards. And the chat will be closed at 8:15. So whatever the questions you post before that will be taken. So with that note, we can move to our session, and to introduce our resource person to the audience, I would like to invite our senior yoga instructor, Ms. Varune Bibile, to take the control. Thank you.
Thank you, Amalka. It is indeed a privilege for me to make a curtailed introduction on Venerable Ven.watagoda maggavihari thera. Our Swamin Wahansa entered the order of Sri Kalyani Yogashrama Samstha under the guidance of Na Uyane Aryadhamma Mahathera at the age of 19. And he completed the monastic training and education for 5 years. From there, our Swamin Wahansa moved to Myanmar for advanced studies of Theravada Buddhism and excelled in Burmese and Thai traditions of Theravada doctrine for 8 long years. During that period, he served as a lecturer at Theravada University in Rangoon and was offered to remain there as well. But our Swamin Wahansa's dedication for Buddha Sasana in Sri Lanka brought him back here. At present, our Swamin Wahansa is offering his Dhamma services at International Institute of Theravada Buddhism at Karuvaragaswawa, where the Buddhist monks are trained according to Theravada tradition in Sinhala, Pali, and in English language. Any member who's listening today is welcome to pay a visit or learn about great services of this institute. Please visit the web page for further references. Avasarai Swamin Wahansa, we now humbly invite you to guide us with your knowledge of Dhamma. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, hello everyone. Good evening. Yeah, so before we start so how about it, Amalka, do you observe the precepts or just you start the Dhamma?
You can start, Swamin Wahansa. Yeah, we don't have that practice now. Yeah.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. So today I was invited to deliver a talk by this group practicing yoga. You are called, we normally call them Astanka, right? Am I correct? Astanka yoga practitioners.
Yes,
right?
Swamin Wahansa. Yes.
And I got to know that people from various nationalities and have joined here. First, and I normally doesn't segregate people based on nationality or ethnicity. Consider everyone as humans. So my topic was, the topic I selected today was getting closer to truth based on a very prominent, or I would call imperative, discourse in the Majjhima Nikaya of the Theravada tradition. We name it the Chunky Sutra, the Chunky. The title was given based on the leading character of the sutra, of the discourse, who had the initial discussion with the Buddha. But in the end, the discussion was led by a young person called Karpatika, which due to whose questions the discussion was given in a very nice way that introduces us how someone could get closer to the truth. So if I directly plunge into the discourse, the Buddha was wandering in the northern part of India, in the country called Kosala, which existed while he was alive in the northern part of the India. We call it the Aryavarta even. So there he was dwelling in a sal grove, forest, we can call a forest or a garden, which had abundance of sal trees. So there lived a very famous, prominent figure called Chunky. He's from the Brahmin clan, and he was well venerated by his disciples and also honored by the king himself, the Pasenadi Kosala. That area, the village he was dwelling, was given to him as a gift by the king. So he was like the sort of the leader of the area. So we call such areas as Raja Deya Janapada or Raja Deya Bhumi, the lands which were given by kings as some gesture of respecting or showing the honor to whatever he has done. So then the monks, people who are living in that area, having got to know that Buddha had visited there, paid a visit. So in an evening, then Brahmin Chunky saw it from his mansion and asked his servants, "What is this about? So what is these people I have gathered and traveling towards a certain direction, the northern side of the village?" Then he got to know that a person called Gautama has arrived this area and he's dwelling. So they are going to have a discussion to meet with him and have some spiritual discussion with this person. So Chunky had never met the Buddha before, but he had heard about his reputation. So he sent a messenger to the people, the flocks who have already started moving that side. Please stop. The leader of the region, Mr. Chunky or Brahmin Chunky, is also going to accompany you to meet the Buddha and to have a very fruitful discussion. So however, the Brahmin Chunky's disciple Brahmins who had studied under him, he was a very renowned teacher and spiritual leader of the area. So they got to know that he is planning to visit Venerable Gautama. So then they consider it as sort of a disgrace to their clan, because Chunky himself was a spiritual leader and the Gautama was also a spiritual leader. So if some leader happens to visit another, it seems like the one who is visiting is paying respect or showing a certain sort of a gesture, respectful gesture to the latter. So they came to him and they wanted to prevent him from going there. So then they started to praise his qualities. So you are such and such a person. So it's not worthy for a person like you to visit just a recluse like Gautama. So please consider about these facts, that you have a huge lineage of disciples. You are being respected by the king. You have a good appearance. You have a proper, wonderful voice, and you are eloquent in speech, and you have studied the Vedas very thoroughly. And you are a master of these Vedas. Even respected teachers like Pokkarasati do venerate you. So a person of your caliber, it's not proper. It's not worthy for a person of your caliber to visit such a recluse. It's his duty. If he wants to meet you, let him come to you and have a discussion. So that was their suggestion, and that was their opinion. Like, please don't go to him. Please don't go to the Buddha. Then the Brahmin Chanki replied them, saying that, yes, what you are saying is true, but please listen to my opinion as well. So this Venerable Gautama, the recluse Gautama, I came from the clan of Brahmins, but he's not from an inferior clan. He comes from the Katyas, one of the reputed clans in India, especially the Sakyans of that era, because the clan system was very intense on those days. I think even still it is found in certain parts of India. Even in Sri Lanka, we have that in certain areas. So then he mentioned, so he comes from a very reputed family. There's no problem in me visiting such a person who has renounced the world from a king's clan, and he gave up the household life, especially the kingdom that he was supposed to get, and also all sort of wealth that he possessed from his father, and also due to his merits. And also he abandoned the household life. He became a recluse, sort of a beggar. Beggar means who begs for food. So he came into this homeless life, not because of anything else, because of due to his own wish. While the kings, the parents were preventing him, were not happy about his decision, but he still took the decision in search of a spiritual bliss. And he became a monk or a recluse at the age of at his prime age. So therefore, he's something that is worthy visiting. And also, I am also handsome, but think about this person, the Gautama. He has all the 32 marks of a great human, great being, great man. So there's no match in our appearances and the way he talks, the reputation he has, not among even the humans, but even among the gods, among the deities. And it's true that the King Pasenadi Kosala has venerated or gifted me, but think about the king of Magadha, the mighty emperor, the mighty empire, the king of the mighty empire, the emperor Bimbisara, he's not just venerating, he has gone refuge under him. King Pasenadi is a disciple of this Gautama. He has gone for refuge to this recluse. And even Pokrasati, who respects me, has gone under refuge, this Venerable Gautama. So it shows that he is much worthy person to visit. And he has abandoned the lust, the greed, the delusion. He has given up all the sensual desires. And he preaches a Dhamma that never harms any other. And also, especially in the end, please consider that he is one of our guests. So he has visited our village. So it's those days, even in today, in the Sanskrit literature, we consider Atiti Devo. The visitor should be considered like a deity or a deva. So based on these reasons, it's my duty to visit him, not his to visit me. So then he was able to convince his disciples, and all of them gathered and visited the Buddha. So at their arrival, they greeted him according to their rituals, and they sat in front of him and started to converse about the virtue and so forth. Especially the Buddha asked this Chanki about what sort of qualities a Brahmin should be endowed with in order to be called a real Brahmin. So there should be the recitation, and also the clan should be pure, from the father and the mother's side, paternal and maternal. Then also he should have a good figure, and also especially the virtue and the wisdom. So then the Buddha asked the questions, if any of these are missing, can still someone be a Brahmin? So then he mentioned, yes, even the clan is a problem, but still, as long as he has the recitations and all this knowledge and all, he still can be a Brahmin. So then it boiled down to the last 2 points. Even someone doesn't have a proper clan, even someone doesn't have a good appearance, even someone is not well versed in the Vedas, as long as someone has the wisdom to distinguish what is good from bad and what is bad from good, and also to have proper conduct, these two qualities are enough for someone to be called a real Brahmin. So then some Brahmins were not happy about it, while that he was taking a bold stance in that era, that saying that even these two qualities are enough to call someone a Brahmin. Then there was another young person called Karpatika. He was 16 years old. He used to discuss and he used to raise his voice in between these conversations. So then the Buddha admonished him, saying that, so these very elderly Brahmins are talking with me, conversing with me. So it's not proper for you to get into this discussion as a youngster. So it's not a culturally thing. It's not a proper respectful gesture to talk in between the elders. So that was the custom those days. And the Buddha admonished him not just to keep silence for a while. He did with a purpose, because he knew that this Brahmin was a very clever person, clever guy. Then somehow Chunky, the Brahmin Chunky, who had started the discussion with the Buddha, the reputed guy, the reputed person, he mentioned that he gave the due respect to this Karpatika, the young Brahmin. He mentioned, Venerable Sir, though he's young, he seems like a grandchild of ours, but still, he's suitable and capable in discussing with you. He's such a learned, talented person, though young in age. Then the Karpatika, the young Brahmin, he just kept silence, respecting the Buddha's admonishment. And then he thought, he had his own dignity. Then he thought, only if Venerable Gautama, the recluse Gautama, looks at me, if he directs his eyes towards me, then only I will start the conversation. Because he stopped me from talking. So only if he initiates a discussion, or at least he pours a look at me, then I would ask him a question. Then the Buddha, with his psychic abilities, was able to read the Chunky, the Karpatika, not the Chunky, the young monk, young Brahmin, his mind. And he knew that his capabilities, that he would ask a very wise at the same time useful question that would lead to one of the great discourses of the sasana. So then the Buddha looked at him. So having known that the Buddha is looking, then the Karpatika Manavaka raised the question. I consider it is one of the greatest discourses delivered by the Buddha himself. I consider it as how someone get closer to the truth, the path the Buddha has mentioned. It's not faith-based, it's investigation-based. How anyone of any religion, any faith could come. What is the procedure that you have to follow in order to getting closer to the truth? So that's why I asked them to name the title, Getting Closer to Truth, or Reaching Closer to Truth. So then the Karpatika asked, Venerable Sir, it has been our custom, it has been our I would call it custom or the nature, that we would accept or we would believe what our forefathers, the Brahminical forefathers have told us about the truth. We have a certain doctrine that has been maintained by in memory, in recitation. So whatever is mentioned in it, we accept it as truth. And we consider that whatever mentioned in this, whatever doctrines other than ours is a false, is wrong, is false. There's no investigation. It's a very clear-cut judgment. This is correct and everything other is wrong. So in Pali, we call idameva satchang mogamanyam. Only this is true. Only this is true. Everything else is true, is wrong. So what do you think about this? What is your opinion about this attitude? That was the question. It's a very nice question. It directly attacks the tradition itself of the Brahmins. Of any tradition, I would call, not of the Brahmins, or any tradition. So then the Buddha's answer was, he again re-questioned the Kapatika. He asked, have you ever seen the truth that is explained in this doctrine? And he said, no, I haven't. So then he asked another question: Is anyone among these the present recluses or Brahmins that you are abiding with? Any of them has realized this truth? And he said, no, not at the moment. We don't know anyone who has reached that level. Then any of the teachers within 7 generations, are you aware of any person who has reached this final goal and seen the destination or seen the ultimate bliss, whatever you call is nirvana or the swarga, whatever it is, or paramatman, whatever? Then he said, no, we haven't heard about such a person. Then how about the reciter, the ones who created these hymns, the doctrines, the names were, if I go into the sutta itself. So he asked the names, few of the names. Attaka, Vamaka, Vamadeva, Visamitta, Yamataggi, Angirasa, Bharadvaja, Vasitta, Kassapa, all these. So the question was, how the Bharadvaja was the clan name of Kapatika. The ancient Brahmin seers, the creators of the hymns, the composers of the hymns, whose ancient hymns that were formerly chanted, uttered, and compiled, the Brahmins nowadays still chant and repeating what was spoken and reciting what was recited. That is Attaka, Vamaka, Vamadeva, Visamitta, Yamataggi, Angiras, Bharadvaja, Vasitta, Kassapa, and Bhagu. Did even these ancient Brahmin seers say that we know this, we say this, only this is true, anything else is wrong? Do they advocate such a doctrine? Have they said such thing? No, Master Gautam, that was his answer. So his answer was no. Then the Buddha gave the simile. So he said, if you're believing on such a thing, to me it seems like a line of the blinds, the blind by birth, the line of the people who are blind by birth. Even the first person doesn't know where he's leading, and none of them in the lineage doesn't know where they are leading at. So therefore, I does not appreciate such a faith, such a blind faith. We call it a blind faith on that. Then another very nice question was asked, a counter question was asked by Kapatika. Then he mentioned, yeah, I do agree that just blind faith is not enough. But please keep it in mind, these doctrines, these hymns, these teachings have been maintained for thousands of years by a generation of Brahmins, generation of teachers. So it is something, it is a reason for us to believe in it, because otherwise, if it was not accurate, why would such a lineage maintain such a doctrine which doesn't have any worth, any value? So it shows that it is also one reason that we consider, even about our doctrine. Our doctrine is even about the Buddhist doctrines. When I say our, is because I'm a Buddhist monk. One reason that we keep faith is this has been the doctrine that has been preserved by these elders who have attained so and so. So if this was not true, why would such a sacrifice be made for that? There's also a very good reason for someone to believe. Believing about our preceding teachers. Then the Buddha said, okay, you were first asking about the faith, and now you move into the tradition. Okay, let me conclude. Let me give you a full answer. Then he took the entire discussion into his handle, and he gave this sutra, the wonderful sutra. He mentions any wise person, any person with at least some intellect, capability of understanding good from bad, who has the ability to think deeply, would surely have any of these 5 qualities within him, any of these 5 thoughts of him. Either he has a faith, saddha. Either he has a ruchi, the preference. You can also say that as approval, I would prefer the translation as preference. Saddha, ruchi. Anussava, the tradition, a doctrine that has been maintained by the tradition. Then akara parivitaka. So we normally translate this as reasoned cognition, not mere cognition. Cognition means thinking or knowing something, investigating, you can call. Especially it comes with consciousness, the cognition. Reasoned cognition means the investigation done with reason, not with faith or anything. So that is called akara parivitaka. And the fifth one is the ditti nijjhana khanti. It means the approval, the reflective acceptance of a view. Having thought under reason, having thought with reason, it's natural for us to come into a conclusion. It's obvious, right? So because of these thoughts, that because of how I have pondered about this is how I understand this, right? So in the reason thought, reasoning thinking can be said as initial stage of an investigation, but still, even at that level, we can still have if something can be reasoned or can be thought with reason, this is also a fact or a reason for us to accept something. Then, having thought deeply, we come into certain ideas. So these are the five. Saddha, the faith. Ruchi, our preference. Then Anussava. Anussava is the tradition, what we have heard from our forefathers or foreteachers. Then Anussava, akara parivitaka, reasoning, thinking or thought, and acceptance of a view, having thought deeply. That is ditti nijjhana khanti. Then the Buddha mentioned it is normal or natural for any human being to have such a thought. But the thing is, it is a decision in haste to come into a conclusion that my view is correct and everything others is wrong. A wise person will always keep an open space for change. So as long as someone keeps this space for the change, for further investigation, then he mentioned, I consider that satchanurakkhana. Satchanurakkhana means being honest about one's point of view. It's like satchanurakkhana means he has secured the path towards truth. Because if someone makes a strong wall about his investigation and say, no, this is the conclusion, I know everything, what I know is the perfect truth. There is nothing more to investigation. Okay? This prevents you from, this is the greatest hindrance that you get in understanding, in finding the truth. So therefore, he mentioned, as long as someone doesn't come into these conclusions and into a conclusion that my faith, my preference, my tradition, my reason, thought, and my acceptance is the truth and everything else is wrong, then he has stopped, he has halted his progress in search of truth. What does this mean? It shows that even though we may have certain understandings about the world, about the life, especially this is about the life and the world, it's not about, he's not talking about the economic growth or success in a society or a success in a family, because these things can be understood with our mundane knowledge. Even our elders could impart us with this knowledge. But this is about the life after death, or what happens after death, how this life began, what is the continuation of life, if there is something, or do the heavens and hells exist? Are there beings who are spontaneously born without a mother and father? Or all this, or is the karma is yielding results after it has been done in future? So these are deep phenomena, we call profound phenomena that cannot be known with ordinary secular knowledge. So having a view here means about this deep phenomena about the life and about the world. If there is there a creator of this world? So these are not secular matters, I would call. These are religious thoughts, philosophical thoughts. So if someone thinks that my philosophy, I have completely understood it, there's nothing else to investigate. This comes with sort of a conceit, we would call mana in Sinhalese, mana. And also a view that the strongly held view that this is true, everything that is wrong. So this sort of rigidness in the mind. So this is the greatest burden for the in search of truth. So what the Buddha is suggesting is always think that there can be wiser people in the world who may know better than you, who may have a better insight than you. So always keep some space for yourself, that in case you can keep your preference. So he's mentioned, yes, as a wise person, he can have all these preferences or the views and the faith and all this, but don't come into conclusion that this is the truth and everything else is wrong. As long as you maintain this stance in your intellect, in your philosophical thought, it's true that whatever you are holding can be true. That's what he's mentioning. That is the given message. What you are holding can be true, but even it can be wrong even. So if it is true, it's okay. But if it is wrong, your space is vital for you to change, to come into the truth. So therefore, because as a wise person, if he has understood the truth, if he's believing in the truth, if he's wise enough, even listening to a false doctrine, he would never be convinced. Because if someone has touched the truth by himself, it's not easy to convince him about something wrong. It's not easy if he has really touched the truth. So if you have understood the truth, okay, you're perfectly safe. But if you're have not understood the truth, there should be some space for you to change and come into the truth. So always keep in mind whether you're following a proper doctrine or not, whether you have a very strong faith in yourself, always keep some space that there can be some insights about the world and the life. So it makes us relaxed. So then, only if someone has this space, he considers that there's a guarantee is there, that a possibility, I would call, not a guarantee, a possibility that you may find the truth one day. Because if someone keeps this space, what would be his attitude? He's a seeking person. He doesn't stop his investigation. He would listen to talks of religious leaders, regardless whether the leader only belongs to your clan or your religion. No, he would always give his ear and listen what they're saying. Does it has any logic? Does it make any sense? So that would be the attitude, because he has not come into a conclusion that I have found the truth and I'm perfect with that. Because he's talking about, because if someone has a direct wisdom, direct knowledge, direct experience, like you're observing me giving a talk, so it's a direct experience. Even the skeptics would doubt on that, and they would doubt on their senses, like the Cartesian dualism was introduced with that skepticism by René Descartes, but he didn't advocate that skepticism. Because of his way of thinking, a new branch of philosophy arose as skepticism, that they are doubting even the senses. So that is, I consider personally, it's something sort of a doctrine that would lead you nowhere, right? So these senses are make sense. So they're like what you're seeing here, what you're hearing here, it is something sort of a direct experience. If someone has a direct experience, Buddha is not in instructing them. So before the direct experience, because then someone can ask a question, where would our investigation stops? Because if someone has to keep a space all the time, where would our investigation stops? No, with the direct experience, it has to come into an end, and there should be some sort of realization. Realization is not based on faith. Realization is not believing something just mere faith, just because someone has told, not just because the Buddha has said something. It has to come with your own direct experience. So before the direct experience, this sort of attitude is the safety. So that's why it goes satchanu rakkana, that you're safe, that there is a possibility that you may find the truth one day. Then with this attitude, and he happens to know that such a preacher or a leader or a religious person is giving a Dhamma talk in such areas, then he gets the urge, oh, better go and try what he's teaching and try out his teachings and discourses and find out if there is something to get into, take garner to our lives. Then, so then he finds out someone is there preaching. Now imagine if this person is preaching the correct truth, correct doctrine. Then he visits him. He's not going to believe him directly. That's not the way of a wise person. Not just believing from the initial level. He listens to what he's telling. He deeply listens, and he investigates this person because he's a religious leader. This may be not applicable to the disciples who are preaching the teachings of the leader. That's why the Buddha asked the question from Karpatika. It also says something very important. He asked, have you seen, or any of your contemporary Brahmins have seen? He said, no. Okay. Have any of your teachers seen for the 7 generations to the past? If any of them have seen, still you can preach the doctrine, because it makes sense, because even it doesn't mean that everyone has to understand to preach the doctrine. A follower can do it if even any of the teachers have understood. And even if the founder of the religion has understood, even if you have not come to the realization, still you are, according to Buddha's standards, he would appreciate, yes, a disciple can preach even without attaining this final stage. That's what happened to him with Uddaka Ramaputta. I think most of you know that the Buddha went to 2 great teachers of that era before his enlightenment, while he was searching. So Alara Kalama, he has attained the 3rd Arupa Jhana, and he practiced with him, and he got to the same level. Uddaka Ramaputta's case, the Ramaputta, son of Rama, was named Uddaka. Uddaka, the son of Rama. Rama, the one who had attained the 4th stage of Arupa Jhana. Uddaka had the 3rd level only. So Uddaka was preaching what the Rama was telling. Rama had told. He has passed away already. Then the Bodhisattva, having learned from Uddaka about an attainment that Uddaka has not touched, then he practiced and came into that 4th level. If you remember the story, Alara Kalama said, yes, we shall divide our group into 2 and control, because we have come to the same level. But Uddaka Ramaputta said, please take the entire disciples together with me and admonish us, because you have seen what the Rama has seen, which we have not seen yet. So this shows that the Buddha was a teacher who satisfies. It doesn't mean that the disciples are not encouraged to enlightenment, to realize, but still they have the ability. Buddha has given the permission that he still accepts if someone is preaching a doctrine of one of his teachers or one of his the fellows, but even before the person has not realized it, right? So then, so the discourse goes about a person who has understood the teaching, and he's one of the masters who are preaching. Then having gone there, listen to the Dhamma talk and investigate the Dhamma and also his behavior. So these are the 2 things that one has to investigate. The preacher, the nature of the preacher, has he really into this? Has he touched it, or does he has any taste of this realization? And the next thing is the discourse. Where does this lead to? What sort of an admonishment is this? Does this increase our lust, hatred, and delusion? Is this harmful to the unity of the society? And is this person teaching the doctrine for any gain, to gain the reputation, to gain any benefits? Or is there a possibility that this person may say something wrong in order to have gain? Is there a possibility that he could be controlled by the greed? Is it in such a level? So that's what a listener has to investigate, not coming into the conclusion of faith immediately after meeting the person. So while he's investigating, if he happens to know, if, that's the thing, if there's a great big if there, if he happens to know that this person has a good proper conduct, and it seems like he is not persuaded by greed or hatred or delusion, like normal men or women. And then the doctrine he's preaching is subtle, it's something deep and makes sense. And it leads for the utter destruction of the defilements, the purification of mind. Therefore, there can be some debates on that, because even a doctrine that leads to jhana makes us to purify ourselves, but still the attachment to jhana may be there, and attachment with getting to a higher state would be there. So according to this teachings, what he's telling is, does this lead to the utter destruction of defilements? There is zero level of lust. Sometimes we can have an argument that lust is necessary, the greed is necessary for our life to continue in our social levels, but always it comes with a price. The price is, greed is necessary for our amusement, for our lives to continue. At the same time, if we are having an attachment, even the slightest attachment to something, and it's lost, it's going to be replaced by grief. So even attachment to the jhanas, even to the attachment to Atman, can cause these sort of unpleasant defilements to arise. So therefore, that's why he's encouraging for an utter destruction of entire defilements and a complete purification of the mind. So then, if he happens to understand that this, even for example, even it doesn't come into that level, at least that if this leads to a purification of mind. But according to Sutta, he's talking about an utter destruction of the defilements. Then, if he happens to know that this discourse is leading to such a destination, and the preacher, the advocator, is not of that nature, that influenced by defilements, then what happens? Defilements mean that lust, greed, hatred or anger, delusion or ignorance. If he happens to know that the doctrine is good, the person shows some lofty or wholesome qualities, noble qualities within him, then a sort of a faith arises naturally. So if you look into if you were attentively listening, you remember there was a faith in the beginning, even the 5 factors: faith, acceptance, saddha, ruchi, right? Anussava, akara, parijitaka, ditthini, jnanaka. There was a faith. And the faith comes again after listening. The difference is the second faith is gained after investigation. It's a faith that naturally comes having understood something. It's a faith with base. The previous faith is a mere faith, we call. It can be true. It can be wrong even. The second faith, still it can be wrong, but it has some base on it. It does not come from the family. It's not coming just because one is born as a Buddhist or a Hindu or anyone. There's no one is born with a religious view. Religious views are imparted on us after our birth by our families, especially, and other teachers that we listen to. So anyway, this faith, the second faith, has come as a result of investigation. Then this we would call a genuine faith. Then the list of factors follows. So he mentions, when faith comes, it will be followed by saddha jato upasankamati. So if he really gets the faith that this person is preaching something worthy listening, he happens to approach him again and again, upasankamati. Upasankamanto pairupasati. Having approached, he associates him. He just tries to spend some time with him, because he knows that spending some time with him gives him some valuable knowledge. There's worthy associating such a person. Upasankamanto pairupasati. This approach is not because of of a culture, or it is not because it has to be done as a ritual, it has to be done as a duty to our religion. No. This approach is based on faith. That faith is based on investigation. It comes naturally. It's a natural urge that is coming. So then he's associating pasankamanto pairupas. Pairupasanto sotango dahati. While associating frequently, you give ear to what he's saying. Because he's such a person. He's not persuaded by greed, hatred, or lust. He's preaching a sort of a subtle doctrine. That's why he initially got the faith. Now he happens to listen again more and more teachings of this person. So tango. Ohita soto dhamman sunati. He's listening to Dhamma. Giving ear, he's listening to Dhamma. Dhamman sutanan dhamma nan dhareti. So the Pali comes as sutva dhamman dhareti. Having learned, he keeps the points in his mind, either memorizing what he has mentioned, or at least the gist of the teachings, the essence. Keeps them in mind. If we are not unable to keep what we have been taught in the mind, then there's no way that we can practice. We have to have a sort of a memory. Without memory, it's not possible to do anything. So then, datanan dhammanang attang paparikati. Then he starts to investigate by himself, not just believing what the preacher says. Now he starts to investigate. Does this make sense? How should we apply in our lives? And how should we get into this quality called sila or samadhi or panya, the vidas vipassana, whatever good quality that he has preached? How do we arouse it within ourselves? Arouse in the sense of wholesome qualities, not in the unwholesome level. Then attanang parikkanto dhamma nijjanang kamanti. So while he's investigating, now there was a recent investigation in the beginning as well, right? If you remember the 5 factors, the faith, the preference, the tradition, the recent thought, and acceptance of a view, the faith repeated. And then the thought, the rational thought, investigation, is the same with the rational thought. Attanga parikati. He's investigating the teachings. And then he comes into sort of understanding, conclusion. Conclusion means not a full conclusion. The things comes into mind. He starts to accept these things. Oh, this is it. This is how I understand this. This is what it means by this teaching. So Ditti Nijjhana Kanti even repeats. So 3 factors which were mentioned in the first phase are repeating again. But here they are with a base. It's not out of nothing. That's the difference. So Ditti Nijjhana Kananto, Ditti Nijjhana Kantiya Sati Chando Jayati. So when he understands the doctrine perfectly, deeply, profoundly, correctly, now he understands. So this is called learning. Up to here, it's learning. Approaches listeners, listens to Dhamma, keeps it in mind, and investigates it and understands the meaning correctly. Then what happens? Having known that this is such a valuable teaching, that it makes sense, that the path is clear till the end, till the final liberation, then it comes, oh, why shouldn't I practice? The chando jayati, the zeal, the interest, the urge starts to arise within him to practice. Then what happens? Chanda jato usahati. He practices, he makes effort. The urge arises, then he tries, makes attempts. He put effort. Ussahitva tuleti. Now he comes to his doctrine. Having understood, having put effort, he understands the true natures of the world. He measures them. Tuleti. Measures means he understands this is impermanent, this is suffering, this is non-suffering, coming with the true natures. Because we are not able to think that the body is permanent, this is obvious. We are not able to think the mind is permanent, it's obvious that it passes away. And when you keep on investigating into the mind and the body, someone would understand that there's no possibility of a solid Atman within it. Then he understands, he starts to know, gets to know that he observes the impermanence, suffering, and non-selfness. This is called tuleti. Tulahitva padati. So when he keeps on investigating, then what happens? The lust, the greed, the attachment towards this self, towards this nama-rupa, towards the world, diminishes. It passes away. It will be cut off. As a result, the hatred would be gone. Then, as a result, the delusion, because when he keeps on seeing, delusion is what would be removed in the beginning. Then it affects, as long as when the delusion is not there, thinking that this is mine or this is I, and taking it as something valuable. So when the delusion with the wisdom one, when understand with vipassana wisdom, that these are the bunch of nama and rupa, which happens due to causes, and which are impermanent suffering and non-self, which are just mere natures, and which is happening like a phenomenon, then there's no space for greed. There's no space. When there's no greed, there's no hatred, because we get angry when something that we doesn't like happens. Something that we doesn't like happens. We don't like happens. So therefore, padahati, with the path consciousness, which eradicates the defilements happens, then padahanto, pahitatto samano, kayena cheva, paramasatyang, sachikaroti, panyaya janang, ativijja pasati. So he realizes the truth, that which called the nirvana, with a direct experience. Then he mentioned, this is the path to satchanubodha. Satchanubodha, attain, that understand the realization. So just having the 5 factors in the beginning and coming in and having an attitude that this is true and others are false, having not such an attitude, not having an attitude like this is wrong, this is true and others wrong, is the possibility of attaining the satchanrakka. There is a guarantee, or there is a possibility that he may attain, he may find the truth. And this is the way of finding the satchanubodha, the realization of the truth. Then he mentioned the attainment of truth. The attainment of truth happens is by the fruition. So when the defilements are eradicated, our minds comes into a very calm, peaceful state. In Pali, we call the palachitta. It's a fruition. The defilements will be eradicated. At the same time, the nibbana will be realized. Then the mind comes into a very calm, peaceful state, which is called the fruition. Then that is the attainment of truth. Previously, it was the realization of the truth. So to realize the truth, one should have the protection that not having the hindrance that prevents one from understanding the truth. So these are this is the sutra, and it shows that a person of any religion, this is the way that someone should find out the truth. So if I sum up what we have discussed so far, mentioned so far, so we mentioned about 5 factors. Any person, the story was nice that Chunky came to Buddha and he was having a discussion, and the Kapatika Manavaka raised a very good question and about the faith and the tradition. And Buddha said, okay, let me explain it incomplete, and he gave the discourse by himself, mentioning that 5 factors are natural in a human being. These are faith, preference, tradition, recent thought, and acceptance of a view, having deeply pondered. Then, but still keep an attitude that there can be a chance that I may find out the truth, or I may find out something much deeper than this. Then with that attitude, it's natural that a person would move to listen to other spiritual leaders. Then while listening, if he gets convinced that the person is out of defilements or is not affected by defilements, the doctrine itself leads to the destruction of defilements, then the faith arises. With the faith, he approaches naturally. Then he listens to him, the doctrine. He thinks about it, keeps it in memory, and investigates it, and understands it very perfectly, and then tries to apply it into his practice, and practices very hardly, and sees what the doctrine says in the natural world with his direct experience, and comes into the attainment, and the mind would come into a blissful state. So this is the path. Then while in investigating, what you're investigating, the preacher, the advocate himself, this is not that much applicable to the disciples, because if the founder has, if the disciples are not entrained, he can be persuaded by defilements and so forth. That's what you see these days in any religion. There are problems in the clergy. But as long as they're able to preach, so the example, the commentary says the example given, taking the Buddha as the example. The simile was given Buddha, taking the Buddha as the example. So he is a person who has fully attained, and then he's capable of preaching. And it is also applicable to an Arahant. But then in a case that disciples have not fully attained, they may have some experience about the attainment. The best thing that we have investigated the doctrine. Does this lead for destruction of defilements and destitution? Is it logical to think that this leads for a liberation or realization, the freedom? Then, then the order of practice comes one after one, and then one a day. So this would be my discourse, saying that how one gets into the close to the truth, and it has to be something based on rationality, not just mere faith. And I think personally, this is a universal doctrine, the universal discourse, saying that how someone would reach us the truth. Yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you got something from the discourse. And yeah, it's up to Amalka to lead the forum with the Q&A session.
Yes, Asray Bante. No matter how far you have learned, and no matter how seriously you do the practice, always keep that space for a change. What a beautiful advice, Bante. I was I felt so excited to hear that. Like, I think if I understand, like, that space is what evolve us to reach the truth, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah. Yes. So with that, we can start our QA session. So if you have any questions, please put them on the chat. Since others put their questions on the chat, I always take this. I'm always privileged to ask the first question, Bante. So let me, when I'm listening to your talk, one thing that always has been that I had in my mind is, Bante, it's true that you mentioned that our faith has to be based on the investigation, and that we need to, we should try to apply that to our practice, which is true. But one question I have, Bante, is we are in different level of our intellect. So we may not understand everything completely. So there we have faith. We may not understand it. We may not apply to our practice 100%, I would say. But still we have faith that it is true. So when, as practitioners, I think all of who are gathered here are true practitioners. That's why they have this interest to join this meeting. So on behalf of that, I would like to ask, like, how do we balance this faith and our intellect?
Yes, that's what the Buddha has mentioned, that he doesn't say to give up your faith, right? He never mentioned in the sutra to give up the faith. Keep the faith in yourself and try to investigate. So if I give a personal experience that I have, that as a Buddhist monk, I do listen to discourses of other people. Like I do listen to discourses that are against Buddhism even. So I find out what is the rationale behind the accusations. And especially I do attentively listen. If someone is saying, for example, if brain and the consciousness is one of the great opponents of Buddhism, because physicalism and dualism, so they are completely opposing each other. If someone is a physicalist, there cannot be any rebirth, something called rebirth. So it's a completely opposing theory. So if I think about myself, having a faith about, otherwise I would not be in robes, right? If I don't have a faith. So if having a faith still doesn't prevent you from investigating or listening. So I'm not sure that whether this can be applicable to each and every human. I'm not bold enough to say that, because I'm not a perfectly enlightened person. And what I see is from my point of view. Yeah, so that's why some teachers would say, don't listen to other discourses that could affect your faith, right? But personally, I feel a human, should have that capacity to fit into your faiths and should be able to listen to other discourses. Though that happens in our. I know that the most of the society may lack this capability, so that's why it happens in politics. So we prefer to listen to what our favorite politician says, but we even doesn't want to listen because we have always a confirmation bias that that person is wrong always. That is a robber or whatever words we use. So that has even affected our thoughts in religious perspective, religious thoughts even. So I think that is something that we have to develop. That one has to keep onto his faith and still keeps on investigating. So the sutta says, the Buddha never mentions to give up your initial faith. You can give up your initial faith only when you are convinced that the second doctrine is better than what you're following. That's natural for any being. So it shows that one keeps on the correct practice, the right practice. If some practices are very harmful, killing and sacrifices, I would never recommend that. So there can be slight differences in our practice, slight differences. And these slight differences seems like minor ones, but they lead to different destinations. I don't agree on the fact that all the teachings would lead to the final destination. No, they are leading to a different destination. Some religions would take you to an eternal heaven. Some would make you to get connected with an eternal Atman. Some religions would say that there is no rebirth. Some would say there is a rebirth and keep on continuing in blissful states. Some would say the rebirth is there and it would naturally end up. And Buddhism says that there is a rebirth and there are causes. If you remove the causes, the rebirth would not happen. So these are completely different destinations. I'm not a person who says that only one has to be true, right? Only one has to be true. There cannot be two truths in the world. So slight differences are there in our practice, the way we practice. So what the Buddha has instructed, as I understood the sutra, he has not instructed someone to give up the practice because there's no way to. There should be some base that someone is standing upon. But still keep on investigating. So if you find out that something is more interesting than what we are following now, then it's time to try it out. But only when you are fully convinced. It has to be. So it's something that as you said, how to maintain this balance. So you just keep on giving up and trying this and this, not changing not like as we change our clothes every day. It has to have with a deep investigation and with proper insight. So I think that's something. It may not be easy, but that's something that we have to develop. Yeah, maybe my answer is not applicable to everyone. That I also have to admit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, maybe it's all depend on how we continue our practice as well, and how we were taught to practice. Yeah, but I understood what you were emphasizing. So it is okay to step out from your faith, but have that space for the change. Everything comes with the practice, this investigation based on what you learn. So yes, much mercy to you, Bhante. So
if I add something like being in your faith, within your faith, you can listen. That's what I'm saying.
You can listen, yes. So I think this is a good opening for our discussion. So we can take an open discussion because our audience is from different faiths, I would say. So, but still we are in this one meeting. So if you have any questions, maybe they are still thinking. Because usually we get questions and I'm not sure whether I can't see them or can a co-host confirm whether we have any questions? Can you please, I see a raised hand. Can you please type your question in the chat?
Don't you normally give the opportunity to talk?
We prefer to put them on the chat, yes. Sometimes we have an unknown audience, but if, shall we take it in that way, Bante? If it is okay with you, we can take it. Okay. Then if you have questions, I will, please raise your hand. So raise your hand so that I can unmute you. Then you can ask your question directly from the thera. So can a co-host unmute? Okay, Dilu.
තෙරුවන් සරණයි ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේ. May I know where I can find this sutta in Tipitaka?
It's in Majjhima Nikaya. If I give the exact description.
Majjhima Nikaya. Okay. Just a second.
Wait, I'll give you the sutta number. Sutta number 40. No, it's Majjhima Pannasaka. Majjhima Nikaya is 3-4 and Mula Pannasaka, Majjhima Pannasaka and Upari Pannasaka.
Yes. Yes.
45. Number 45.
45. Okay. Is it which Vagga? It's Bhikkhu or?
You'll be 45 should be last Vagga.
The last one? Okay.
Brahman Vagga, I think so.
Yes. Okay. Theruvan saranai swamini wanse.
I still I don't see any questions. Would you like to take this opportunity to elaborate more, Bante, until we get a question? Do we have, now we have religions, as you, at the end you mentioned, like, which leads to conflicts. And there are seekers. So what is the difference as you see? And why we have this conflict if it is one truth?
That's based on, it's a very good question. If there's a way of thinking now. Some philosophers do argue if there is hunger, there should be food, right? So the way of thinking, one way of thinking is that I don't fully agree with that. One way of thinking. If there is a thought of God, that God should exist. That was the final conclusion. So if there is one truth, the question can ask why there is such a conflict. Why people are conflicting on that. According to, if I look into that with the Buddhist perspective, that's based on the truth is something quite profound, something quite hidden, something which is unknown to the normal wisdom. That's the nature of a truth normally, because that's otherwise, if it was something very obvious, people would not have conflicts on this, right? So it shows that it is something which is hidden or which is something profound. So then the inability to penetrate into this, it depends on the intellect or the level of human beings. That how much deep our thought, how deep our investigation is, depend on that. We would have different levels of our understanding. So that is the main reason that I feel it is something quite hidden. It can be proven with the fact that there are so much religions shows that this is not something that can be seen like our hands or legs that we possess, or the sun, the sky that everyone can see. So even due to that profoundness, the intellectual levels of humans are different. That can also be known. If someone teaches some mathematics or science or whatever teaching, the levels of understanding are different. So because of that, because of this reason, we may have different teachings. So in search of the truth. So what is the end of the truth? It has to be a realization. So what the Buddhism advocates is that attainment of a truth. Attainment, at the level of attainment, one has to see it with direct wisdom. So seeing Nama Rupa with direct wisdom, the seeing starts, according to the Vipassana method, for example, seeing starts from the level of Ditti Visuddhi, we call, as long as we see the Nama and Rupa as two different elements. We call it the dualism. These are two different things. Some may argue that the brain is the function of a consciousness. It has lots of problems that if we dedicate this consciousness into matter, because we don't have the qualia. Qualia means the experience that we get with the matter. Qualia means like, I'm seeing you, I'm listening to you, I'm sort of having feelings. So this sort of experience is not possible with matter. So then what happens when we start to see the Nama and Rupa separately, from this moment, we are getting a direct experience that we see how the consciousness is happening and we see how the matter, it changes and the natures of this matter, hardness, softness, so forth. And someone starts to understand there is no self within this. Then he moves on to see the cause and effect. There are two types of cause and effects in Vipassana practice. Seeing the causes and effects of this life, like for instance, the sound and ear causes the rising of ear consciousness. Eye and the color causes the eye consciousness to happen. And this is called the causal relationships within this life. But it is utterly necessary if someone wants to progress in the Vipassana practice, that if someone can see the anicca, dukkha, and anatta in Vipassana, that's not a huge case. But to have a very solid foundation to attainment of nirvana, one has to know how the rebirth happens based on karma. It's not to say that you have to see the past lives and future lives, how this phenomena works. That knowledge comes from the investigating the Nama and Rupa thoroughly. So the causal relationship from the one life to another is the second causal relationship. Seeing that causes in this life causes the Nama Rupa in this life itself is a one sort of causal relationship, but it's utterly necessary that one has the understanding about the cause and effects from life to life. So if I'm talking about the Buddhist practice only. So because the thing is, when you attain a nobility or noblehood, it's not that someone is believing about rebirth, because the Buddha has mentioned that he has to have an understanding about how it is happening as his own experience. It can be done without seeing the past and future lives with the psychic abilities. Then what happens, someone moves into seeing the rising and falling of Nama and Rupa, considering them as anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Then what happens, due to this causal relationship, as long as craving, as long as defilement, as long as the karma is persisting within ourselves, the future lives are bound to happen. There's a high possibility that they are going to happen. We call them anupanna dhamma, the suffering that is going to come. The non-arisen suffering that would arise had the causes prevail. So having understood this, that the possibility, then he still keeps on investigating the Nama and Rupa, anicca, dukkha, anatta, and eventually seeing the truth, seeing this, he gets disgusted about this Nama and Rupa, and he longs for a liberation. When observing this liberation with a direct wisdom, the defilements would be cut off, and the suffering that is going to happen, that would have happened had the causes prevail, would cease. This is called anupada nirodha. So this anupada nirodha is equal to nirvana. So this nirvana would be realized with direct experience, that leaving no doubt for the person whether such a thing exists or not. So in this Buddhist practice, someone is not believing in nirvana. One who had attained the nobility is not believing in nirvana because the Buddha has mentioned. It's not because the tradition says. It's not because the doctrine has mentioned. And he sees it by himself. Then the final thing that I really appreciate in the Buddhist practice is that after someone has attained, Buddha is not necessary to say that you have attained. It's not necessary for someone else to say that. The knowledge comes within himself that I have attained. If someone is in a doubt that whether I have attained or not, it is a clear indicator that you have not attained. But still the thing is, even without attaining, one can have a false belief that he has attained. That's the tricky thing. But if someone has a doubt whether they have attained or not, is a clear-cut indicator that you have not attained. So what what I like in Buddhism is that it shows that it gives the knowledge has to come from yourself, and you are convinced by yourself that you have attained. So to my understanding, a realization has to come in that manner, that you have to see the truth by yourself, and you should know that you have seen the truth. It's called metacognition in philosophy, that one has to know that he has known the truth. So to that level, if some doctrine can explain the teachings to that level, and some would say that the thing happens after death, the purification, the combination, the unification, or the birth in eternal place happens after death. So this personally I consider is not as a direct experience. It's always the faith, sort of faith is there always. The faith factor has to play a role. So if someone argues now, if that is the truth, if it cannot be directly experienced in this life, it's a different matter. It's a different topic of debate. So personally, what the Buddha has mentioned and what personally I believe is, if truth is there, it has to be experienced in this very life with direct experience. Then only you can get a very solid confidence that the truth has been understood. So yeah, so that's due to this subtlety. There are certain different doctrines appearing in the world.
Yes. Yes. Much merit to you, Bhante, for that deep explanation about the truth. As you explained, as you mentioned earlier, like it should come from your practice and what you experience at this moment. And from that experience, if you can realize what is the truth, I think that is universal religion, that no matter what is your school of thought, it's a universal religion. Since we do not see any questions in the chat, Bhante, and I know...
Just to add one thing.
Yes.
Now, according to Buddhist teachings, someone can ask a question. So when I was doing some English elocution in the Trinity College means there were exams done by the British Trinity College and NAMDA. I participated in the private exams. In one of these Trinity College exams, I happened to deliver something about Anuradhapura to polish my English and this elocution lessons. So one of the foreign inspectors, they asked me, she was interested in Buddhism, and she asked, is it necessary for anyone to liberate or get attained without being a Buddhist, according to your teachings? She asked. So I was able to answer that because I had some sort of Dhamma knowledge by that time. So today, if I answer yes, I would say yes, because there are the Buddha himself was not a Buddhist. Number one question. So it shows that a non-Buddhist, who doesn't have a faith, can attain the truth. And Pacceka Buddhas, I think you have heard about the Passe Buddha, Pacceka Buddhas. They do not follow any doctrine, but they search by themselves. And the doctrine says that only apart from these two, one has to always listen to some doctrine and attain. So as you said, the word you said, that's what struck me, the universal truth. The universal truth means that any human being who is capable should be able to attain this. And yeah, then someone can also argue that even in Jainism, you have Pacceka Buddhas who got attained to a certain level, not to the level of Mahavira, because this concept is found in other religions even. So if I just stick to the Buddhist tradition, so it shows means it advocates about the universal truth. It encourages us to call this a universal truth. So because as long as the requirement is the wisdom, the qualities, the virtues, the truth is there. So if you are come to that stage, you'll be able to realize it. So that's why I call it a universal thing.
Yes, Bhante. And keep that space for that change. Yes. Yes. It was such an interesting discussion with you, Bhante, we had today. And I think with this, we can conclude our session. So again, on behalf of this audience and on behalf of Ashtanga Yoga Mandir, let me convey my utmost gratitude to you, Bhante, for sharing this insight with us today. And with this merits, may you attain your spiritual goals, whatever the goals you have in your mind.
Thank you very much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So may I ask you what Ashtanga means? 8 numbers is what the meaning of this yoga group?
Ashtanga means 8. Actually, in yoga also, Bhante, we have, as in Arashtangika Marga, there we have 8 steps. In yoga also, we have, in Raja Yoga, that Ashtanga Yoga. It's 8 steps, which leads to the liberation.
Okay.
So yes.
So any of you have reached these 8 stages? Any? Yeah, there are people.
We are practicing. We are on our way.
Okay. I wish you that you'll be able to reach that level.
Yes, and I would like to, maybe we have our Sri Vyasa sir with us, who is the head of our institute. I would, can we have him? So maybe he can give a better explanation than me.
I would like to listen.
Yes. Premi, can you spotlights? Vyasa sir, would you mind to come on video on? It says, Bhante, at the end, it leads to dhyana and samadhi. That's why we choose this topic as well, because it's part of this Ashtanga Yoga. Dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are the final 3 steps in yoga.
Okay. So it's a very high concentration, is it?
Yes, yes. We have pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Yeah, samadhi is the final one. Yeah, it's more like samatha, as I understand, that you go to higher dhyana.
You're not only doing the physical exercises, it shows that you are doing a meditation subject.
Of course, Bhante, yes. Yoga is not only about physical exercises. Actually, physical exercises comes at the earlier stages. We do asanas and pranayamas to prepare our body for a deeper practice of dhyana and samadhi.
Yeah.
Yes. We have Vyasa sir with us. Sir, I hope you heard the question from the Bhante, and if you can give us an explanation about what is Ashtanga Yoga.
Namaste, Vandaji. Thank you very much for joining, and it was a very nice thing. So I think the Ashtanga Yoga is basically the 8 limbs of a practice which was codified by 2 great personalities. One was by Patanjali and the other person was by Tirumoolar. These are the 2 great personalities who was the counterparts, and where they gave the steps like what should be done, what should not be done. And then we have the different asanas, it's considered that there are various types of asanas, but basically 64 asanas, 32 asanas, 16 asanas. So when a person progresses into a higher level, the number of asanas comes down and it ends up in 1 asana.
What is the final asana you have? What is the final asana?
So basically, they can select Siddhasana or Siddha Yoni Asana or Padmasana, depending on the nature of the person. The asanas will slightly differ.
Okay, right.
And so basically, you will see when the asanas are classified, the asanas names are classified according to the nature of the realized personalities. So sometimes based on which asana, the great saint has attained, so that asana will be there. So like that, the asanas comes. Then we have the different pranayama practices. That is to basically move away from the mind.
Okay.
Pranayama technique is used to move away from the mind. not to be with the mind.
Away from
And
your
then
thoughts.
after...
Away from your thoughts means.
Yeah, so because the thought is part of the mind system, so we just say thoughts, mind, because then all the other attributes of the mind comes under that. And then after that, we have the different senses withdrawal techniques. So once the senses are withdrawn, then you need to place the senses. And then from there starts the concentration. In concentration, there are 27 stages. And from the concentration, then comes to the dhyana. Dhyana, it has 108 stages. And then comes to the samadhi. Samadhi, basically in scriptures, we have 108 as, based on the whatever the levels they have realized. But that is unlimited because every person, whoever has realized, is not going to come and tell how they have realized. So, but for the structural studies, we have in the realization itself, there are various stages. According to the stage of the realization, they get the names, whether he's a yogi or a rishi or a muni. So the names comes according to the names of their stages of realization.
Right, right.
So all these things which comes together comes as Ashtanga Yoga.
The highest name is given, like rishis and all. What is the highest stage, the name that you get normally? What is the highest name that you get in a highest stage?
So basically, we will say that the first comes into the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So starts from the Samadhi. And then from there, it goes as we have, basically you will see 240 lokas are there. So to which loka that meditation practice, or sometimes you will say in some, because we have various sampradayas, lineages, traditions. So one you will have the Shaiva Sampradaya, the Vishnu Sampradaya, or the, like that you have the Shan Sampradaya, 6 Sampradayas. So it all depends on which Sampradaya that comes into number one. Then it comes also comes into the lineages also, which Veda Sampradaya they come, whether they come under the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda or Atharva Veda. And then they also come under the which lineage they come into, which the Guru traditions, like sometimes you will have the different, like the Mahasanghas, you have the different Sanghas, like that based on the Rishi Sampradaya, you have 18 major Sampradayas. So one person will come into that and then from there he will go into that. And so basically you will see that most of the meditation comes into the Shiva Sampradayas, which is very popular nowadays, which is nowadays in the sense which is mostly everyone knows. But there are also other like popular, like the stages of the various stages of the Vishnu Sampradayas. So it comes into that stages.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. One last question. One last question.
Yes, Bhante.
So when you come to the final asana, it depends on the person, right? So is the person is able to determine it by, how does it determine that? Which?
So the final asana is basically the final asana, the final mudra, and the final pranayama is determined by the which stage of realization. So basically what happens once a person goes to the 27th stage of the meditation, the body goes into a specific mudra, specific pranayama, and specific asana. Now what we do is, now we go to a Padmasana, like, bring the leg like this. Now we go to a Padmasana, we take a mudra and we go for a pranayama. But in the final stages, what happens is it works on the other way around. Once a person attains a certain place, now for example, you have an asana which is called as Machyendra asana by one of the Machya Muni. So there what happens, once he attains a stage, the body is brought to a certain asana, they will come into a certain mudra, and the prana also will come into a specific. So it comes on the other way around. But what yes.
Naturally. It comes naturally, you mean?
Yeah, from the level of where he or she attains, the body goes into that level.
Right.
So based on what the person's meditation position, a realized disciple or a person of that nature will know he or she is in which state of samadhi or the realization.
By just looking from outside, he will be able to know.
He will be able to know basically. He will not be able to know the complete, but he will know now this is it. So maybe he will have to be there for another 3 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours. And then what they do, they take measures to protect it because the body becomes helpless. Because there has been incidences like, some disciples did not know which stage he was. They thought he was dead and they started to bury also. All these things happened. So, and then once they did the last rituals, he comes up from that and all things happens, So there is a specification. So the person who has explained that in great depth is one textbook which is called as Tirumandram. Which has 3,000 verses. Originally, there was 9,000 verses. Then because of the various situations, all got lost and only 3,000 verses are there. In that 3,000 verses is explains the whole process and all the techniques.
Okay, thank you very much for your elaboration.
Thank you.
Interesting. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. And special thanks for, special first, Vasya Kalyana Sundaram. Thank you for your wonderful explanation. And also special thanks to Mrs. Amalka Chandrasiri and also Mrs. Varuni Dibile for calling me to this opportunity and to this Dhamma talk. And also Mrs. Priyanti. I think you are known with a different name, right?
Family.
Family, yes. And
yes.
Also Asoka Vikramanatne also invited me.
Yes.
Regard. So thank you for everyone, and also wish you all the best and in your practice, and may you be able to attain these higher stages of your yoga practice. Sure, the best. Okay, thank you very much.
Much merits, Bhante. Would you mind to stay for 5 minutes more? Like we are going to conclude. I know you are busy.
Okay, right.
Yeah, okay. Because I feel this is a nice platform to conclude our session. Because with today's session, we come to the end of this monthly program, the Dhyana program. So I would like to take this opportunity first to thank our sir, Sri Vyasa Kalyana Sundaram. Actually, this is his idea. He's the one who conceptualized this. We started this last year, December. I think that was the ideal time with the situation we had in the country, like with the pandemic, we were all stuck in our houses. So actually he came up with the idea to have an all faith meditation program with the practice. So that is the interesting thing. So every practice, every session, we took some time to practice all these teachings. So it was a beautiful distraction during that time, because with the pandemic, one thing we learned is that not only our physical fitness, the mental resilience also plays a role when it comes to immunity. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank sir for all your guidance and support you have given so far. The key person for the success of having 24 sessions of Dhyana. Thank you, sir. And also I would like to take this opportunity to remember all the resource persons, including you, Bhante, who joined us these sessions. Because when we organize these sessions, one thing we noticed is that the spiritual teachers are the most busiest. Like it's very difficult to get a time from them because they are so busy, because they are doing such a wonderful service without a noise, which helps us a lot to maintain our life, maintain our balance in the mind, in the stressful life we are having. So I would like to take this opportunity to convey our merits to all the resource persons amidst their busiest schedule to support us to make these sessions a success.
Be true, I didn't consider this as a praise. It's so if the Buddha was there, we would be blamed for being busy so much.
But this is for good causes, which helps us a lot as laypersons. So we highly appreciate that, Bante. And also, I would like to thank our special thank to Ms. Shamali, who introduced Bante to us, and Ms. Varuni Bibile. And also, I would like to mention our technical team, the AYM program team. We call them the technical team. So they are always behind the scene. If I named Ms. Premi, Ms. Varuni, Ms. Rika from Japan, and Mr. Amal and Ms. Nirushi. This is our team, Bante, behind the scene. And they made sure, not only for Dhyana, for any program, they are our technical assistants and they make sure that everything happens smoothly without a hiccup. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank them. And also our AYM members who join for these Zoom meetings because of their interest, and all the our audience, last but not least, our audience who make this session, not only this one, who joined with us. There are people who has been with us for all these 24 sessions and who put their questions, who take nice discussions from these talks. So I would like to thank them all on behalf of Ashtanga Yoga Mandir, because they are the success behind this program. So with that, we can conclude our session, and we are at the end of a year. So a new year is waiting. So I think with today's talk, we can take a new message to the new year that keep a space for change. So with that message, I would like to conclude this meeting. Good night, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you.